So here we are to show an overview of the X32 desk at the theatre plus QLab. This example is from the Senior Youth Group's production of Grease 2023, and this sound design is something I created at home initially and then is obviously loaded up at the theatre. I just wanted to give in this example a quick overview of what QLab is capable of doing. At this point it has nothing to do with the lighting. That'll be a separate video at some point, but effectively the lighting part of the show can also be included with this show file in QLab at the same time. There's nothing to say that can't happen, and everything can be automated. So as you can see, I have two pieces of software in front of me. One is QLab with the Grease show file, and I'm just going to change that over so you can see. So this is currently what I've put together, and it's literally Act 1 so far. It's 99% complete, but there's more than enough to show exactly what it's capable of when you put a show together. This here is the X32 edit software, which is what we use to connect to the X32 desk at the theatre. This just makes life a lot easier when it comes to configuring the desk, especially in advance. You can by all means sit in the theatre on your own and manually create all of this setup on the desk as well, but trust me, using the software is 100 times faster and 100 times easier to do so. Even if you do it at the theatre, it's going to be so much easier having the software. Even on the basic things, like if you were to take the Scribble script that appears on the desk, which basically has the information like the name of the person, in this simplistic way, it's a right mouse click. You can very quickly type in P, whatever you like. You can select the color you want it to appear, and it's done. Trust me, if you want to have hands-on experience of doing that on the desk, I will show you how that's done, and you will automatically understand the reason why and the speed and the difference as to why I use this software now. Also at this time, just for your information, I've got this software connected to my own X32 at home. So for example, if I move the faders, if you look down next to, here we go, Sunny and Kaniki, I'm moving both of those physically on the desk that's connected to the software. So I'm not using my mouse for that. I'm doing it. Obviously I can use my mouth, and trust me, the physical fader on the desk is moving on the opposite side of that. So part of the process, this is getting into things like the technical, the sound tests, everything you need to do when you get to technical rehearsal. This is just to make life easier when you need to go through things, because the bulk of it is preset and in place, and this is why I'm showing these videos for you. So on the QLab is set up, and we use MIDI to control or fire commands basically from the software of the Mac to the X32 desk to do what we want it to do. So for example, the simplest thing that we use for this is to mute and unmute the radio mic channels of the actors. Plus, for the way I work, is to set up the right-hand bank on the desk, which is on the top layer which is the DCA layer, which is this group here, which you can see DCA 1 to 7. Sorry, 1 to 8, I should say, because the bands I've allocated to 8. And firing a cue on QLab will make changes to the X32 desk. So it's a bit tricky, and I have to be careful which cues I use, because obviously the first channel, Danny, the channel that I'm physically plugged into at home that I'm using to speak to you over, if I choose the wrong cue, will mute that channel and you won't hear me talking. So I'm going to be very selective of which channels I use. I just realised you probably can't see the mute option. Oh, get my mouse on the right. There it is. Sorry. So what's missing at the bottom of that screen? I'll just bring that in. Are the mutes and the channels and the DCA numbers right at the bottom of this screen. So for example, I know that if we go to QLab and we take the Cafe Steps cue that I've created, and basically once you select this particular MIDI cue, there are 3 tabs when you're creating this. What you can put the number of the cue, which I don't use. Anything you want to type in for information, what the scene is, the act, etc., etc. The triggers, which we are not covering, we don't need to worry about that, and the settings. So you can see in this one, this is the key part of the setup. The MIDI destination is the X USB. Basically, there is a USB cable that runs from the Mac into the back of the X32, into the X32 card, that allows to communicate not just audio commands, but MIDI commands, and also lighting commands, because the lights themselves use the MIDI channels to then run the DMX out on the lighting side apart, which doesn't really affect the X32 desk, but it will affect the lights. So in this particular cue, I'm doing a MIDI program change. It's looking for channel 2, and there is a hard copy, and there will be a hard copy of the X32 MIDI programming codes, which will help, and we'll make those available. And so in short, what it's saying is, look, I want you to do a change on channel 2 on the X32 desk. Channel 2, in this case, for a program change, refers to the snippets that we use on the X32. And the snippet is basically a snapshot of all the settings that you want to have, or that you can choose to have turned on or off, or moved or changed in any place on the channels. So if I was to basically hit the go, it will run this program change, and on X32 you will see that across the bottom all of these channels have been unmuted, and in the DCA side of things you'll see there are now copies of the Danny channel, which is this one here, which is the one I'm on. So this is like the voice remote control. If I bring that down, would have disappeared momentarily, because this signal isn't going straight out to the master over the side as it was a moment ago. It is first going via this remote control, this DCA, digital controlled analog. Okay, so basically this allows us to, in prep, set the level of the performer on their particular radio mic. And once it's level, and once the EQ has been put in place and all of the bits and bobs we need, in theory, we shouldn't have to touch them again. They are set. So we only need to control the volume layer, and then we can do that with these DCAs. And we set it up in such a way that you only switch on the people you need at the time you need them. Now, obviously, you'll see I'm going channels 1 to 10, but I only have 8 DCAs. Now, you just have to think common sense with this. So, for example, this example, the Cafe slash Steps cue that we created, follows on from Summer Nights. if I fire the Summer Nights, the one I've done for the actual song, you'll see that there are a couple of extra items in the DCAs. One is for backstage mic, for anybody backstage that are doo-wopping, if you like, backstage, and reverb to give a little bit of flavour to the voices that are coming out. So effectively, at the end of Summer Nights, it comes out of song mode, if you like, but it involves all the same people. So for ease, to finish this scene, I kept it the same because all the characters are on. You'll notice also in this particular song number, a lot of the ensemble are switched unmuted as well, down the bottom here. So you've not just got your principals, you've got your ensemble, you've got your backstage mic, which the backstage mic actually goes onto the 17th channel in the list on another layer. And we've got our standard overheads, the Mac computer that plays the music, and of course the band. And they will all be set and they're on channel 8. So by running the Q on QLab, it just basically switches off the backstage mic and the reverb, and it keeps everybody the same. And I can follow the script, and I keep Danny and Sandy as main principals, but basically any of the boys are speaking I can raise, and any of the girls that are speaking I can raise accordingly. And it's just a case of bringing them backwards and forwards depending on who's speaking at the time, just making them a bit more prominent. And that being said, within the next Q on QLab, as I was saying earlier about adding the lights, this particular Q, Q16, does 3 things. It will mute the mics on the board, so there are no live radio mics or backstage mics. It will play the sound effect of the school bell that goes off first as that scene starts, and is a 4.5 second piece, which I have modified down to about 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds worth of audio. But after 3 seconds of that running, for the last few moments of the bell, the mics that are required for that scene will liven. Okay, so, oh, excuse me. I thought I heard a phone ringing. What's that? I need to pause and come back on this. Apologies for that. Apparently my Alexa timer was going off. That was most unexpected. Where was I? Right, this Q that I created, Q16, School 1, as I was saying, does 3 things. It mutes all the mic channels, it will run the sound effect of the school bell, and then it will liven the necessary mics for that scene. I have turned the audible part of this for the school bell right down. I did test it earlier and it was very, very loud. So I'm now going to run this cue, but what I'm going to do, instead of being on this screen, I'm going to go to the X32 screen so you can see it more, and I will run the cue from the desk. So I will fire that cue. It mutes my channel for a few seconds, obviously, rings the bell, and then it livened. And now we have in the DCAs, Danny, Doody, Frenchie and Marty are now the live people. And my process is to set usually the first people who speak up at the level they need to, and then the others just below so that I can bring them in as I need to. Okay. So this is, in long and short, a very quick. Now, let me be clear that you don't need QLab to do this. And I've done previous shows on just the X32 firing exactly this. So within the X32, in the show control side of things, you get cues, scenes and snippets. So obviously the cue can be loading a particular scene, a setting of everything on the desk. it can like on here, I've got the default and I've got my prep. And snippets, as I say, are the small bits of information. So for example, I'm highlighting summer nights here, and a lot of these are pretty much the same thing. So I've decided I want to have control over the scribble source, so changing the name details, the groups, which would be the DCAs, the fader and the pan settings. So basically if I change the fader settings, and of course the mute. I want to only affect the channels 1 to 22. This is the 16 radio mics, the backstage mic, the overhead mics, but it does not affect any of the band or the computer itself playing audio. I also want it to at times mute my FX1 returns left and right for the reverb. Okay, so that's when I switch on and off the reverb, and of course the DCA groups, so that when I change the information of who's actually I want to see in those, it will do that. Now again, you can do all this hands-on at the desk, and you will need some serious time. And I actually encourage people to try this because having that hands-on knowledge is a good backup. But effectively, this whole snippets or scenes or mix I would create, and I probably by default, just because it's good practice, will create all the necessary cues to pick up all the necessary snippets or scenes to run. So if QLab was not connected to the X32 desk, I could run everything on the X32 without QLab. Okay, but whereas we have QLab, and there are times when we may struggle for a couple of people to operate both lights and sounds, this is the beauty of it. Plus, it's just as I say, it's a lot quicker and a lot easier creating these things in general. And also, it means that you can take the entire show file with you to other societies or theatres and load up like that. So this is, as I say, just a very short example of what can be done with the software and the systems that we have at Shinfield. And as I say, we can talk about another video, the lighting, that allows us basically to add whatever lights we want at whatever time. But I will do a separate video for that, but the lights can be added in as well. I hope this has been of help or informative in some way. Please do obviously come back on the comments or contact me. If anybody would like any one-on-one training at any point, please don't hesitate to contact me, and we can go through anything you like. And I'm more than happy on any future shows that we do. If you want to have an experience of running the sound for a show, please do speak to me, and you can shadow me whilst we do bits and bobs and setups, and I will gladly let you run a show. Obviously, I will be there with you. Don't panic. But it's borderline more of a case of just hitting the button and following the script and hitting the cue once it's all programmed. It should be very minimal to worry about, but understanding the background and how it gets to where it gets to, that does take a little time, and the more you learn, the better you will become at it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I look forward to doing the next one. Thank you.